Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. Now, this topic is something that I realized I'm going to have to make probably a multi-part series to cover. And the reason for it is I was part of a focus group on long distance trips in electric vehicles. And toward the end, we were asked what we thought would be the single biggest factor in increasing electric vehicle adoption. Now, this group is composed of Model S owners, Model X owners, and Bolt EV owners, which makes sense because they were drivers who said that they had experience with long distance trips in electric vehicles. The Model 3 wasn't out yet or was too new to really have much representation. So that all kind of makes sense. But I don't know if that frames the way people were responding. But what I found interesting is when we were posed that question, and I think the options were faster DC charging, uh, more public DC fast charging stations, or more range. And I think there were one or two other options. Uh, I was the only one in the group who said that he felt that the primary way of improving EV adoption was through increased range. And I have my reasons for saying that. I was just surprised that I was the only one who gave that as the what he felt or she felt was the number one factor that would lead to EV adoption or increase EV adoption. So, and I have my reasons for it, right? And I think the sweet spot or the target for electric vehicles really should be about 450 to 500 miles of electric range. And the reason for that is there's a National Renewable Energy League survey, I believe it was, that showed that something like 80% of all charging is done at home. And that's when you're including small battery electric vehicles. And the idea that 80% of commuters drive less than 40 miles a day. So most of the charging is done at home anyway. And that seems like a knock against larger battery, longer range vehicles, but still having 20% of the population relying regularly on public charging, that's still a pretty big number, and it's going to require a lot of money in terms of infrastructure. And I think for some people it's a holdup. So, another thing is I think that by increasing the battery range, by increasing the driving range, what you're going to do though is shift, even if it's not home charging, you're going to shift so that, vast majority of charging, maybe up to 99% of charging is done at destination chargers. Now, Tesla sort of co-opted that term and they're referring primarily to their level 2 charging, but really destination charging is charging that's located at a location where you would be anyway for a period of time that you would be there anyway. So to me, if Starbucks had a 150 kilowatt charger, that would be a destination charge. If you showed up for the purpose of getting coffee and you plug into a 150, 250, 350 kilowatt charger, and for the 5-10 minutes it takes you to get coffee, you're charging, that's a destination charger. Now, to me, the distinction is what I would call travel chargers. Travel chargers are chargers where your sole purpose in stopping is to recharge or to refuel your vehicle. So that's no different than travel stations for gasoline powered cars. The sole purpose of stopping there is to refuel. Now they happen to have other amenities and services, but your purpose is to refuel. And I see those as being very few and far between if electric vehicles start to get those longer ranges. Um, the other thing that larger batteries do is they facilitate faster charging. A lot of people refer to what they call a C rate, and most modern batteries can accept 2 to 3 C charging rate, which essentially means like a Bolt EV. It would take a 3 C charge rate would be 180 kilowatts. Essentially, it would charge to full in about 20 minutes. So a 1 C charge rate would be 60 kilowatts. It would take 1 hour to fill a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack. So, up to 2 to 3 Cs, but that does start to wear on the battery. For longest use, you really don't want to exceed 1 to 1.5 C. So if you have a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, 1.5 C is 150 kilowatts. That's 600 miles of range in an hour of charging. That's pretty good. So, that's something to consider because those batteries can accept a faster rate and a larger charge. They'll also have longer battery lives because you'll be able to optimize them so you're using the window of battery that does the least amount of wear. So somewhere between 40 to 70% battery capacity. If you're only using that window, your battery is going to last for much, much longer. Also, the larger batteries help in terms of grid-tied systems. If you want a battery backup system, if you want vehicle-to-grid technology, it gives you a lot more flexibility in that regard. If you have regular 500 miles of range, devoting 20% of your battery to battery backup systems and that sort of floating power that you can feed back into the grid or take away, it's a very small sacrifice. Um, and then the other thing that I think is really important, because this is fairness and balance, right? It shifts the burden of infrastructure development and costs onto the people who are actually utilizing that service. So for me, I do a lot of long distance driving, right? I require infrastructure to be put in place to do that. Now, if my car had 500 miles of range, I'd be paying more for it, but that burden would be shifted on me, and because there would be less need for an infrastructure to support it. So really, everybody who's driving around with a shorter range electric vehicle, they really are being subsidized by the infrastructure. And if the infrastructure is being paid out of the public pocket, you can make an argument that they're not necessarily paying their fair share in terms of supporting and building out an infrastructure that they're otherwise the primary recipients of. And so, I mean, I don't like the term like entitlement or anything of that nature, but it is a question of fairness. And when it comes to things like budgets and you're asking other people to put their hard-earned money into something, it could affect the infrastructure development. It could affect how much other people are willing to devote to it. So I think there's also an issue of fairness that larger battery, longer range vehicles provide. Now, I know there are some drawbacks: extra weight, extra cost, more materials, and things of that nature. And those are all valid criticisms to having longer range electric vehicles. But I do have a few things to say about that. One is, I'm not saying that shorter range battery electric vehicles shouldn't be available. If you can make a 200-mile commuter car for $20,000, $25,000, yeah, sure, fine. But if someone wants to be able to buy a grand touring car that has a 500-mile range, they should be able to. I mean, that option really does need to exist. It One of the criticisms I heard, though, is it would require improved battery technology. I don't believe that it would. Uh, Part of the thing that we see is some of the larger vehicles with the largest batteries, they're also really inefficient, and it has nothing to do with the size of the vehicle. It has to do with the motor design. So the Model S and the Model X are both relatively inefficient because of their induction motors. You look at the Model 3 with its permanent magnet motor. If it were to have the S100's 100 kilowatt battery pack, you're already looking at close to a 450-mile car. Now you could say, oh, the battery wouldn't necessarily fit in that footprint, but you're not that far off. You already have an 80 kilowatt hour battery pack in the Model 3. So stretching that out really wouldn't be that hard. Now the other, so I don't think it would take any sort of technological revolution. So let me know what you think about this topic. I'm curious to hear what you say. What you say about it. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. It helps out the channel. And yeah, thank you guys.